In episode 3, it's Coronation Day. It's a huge day. The problem is the king and the queen, they're not together. Brimsley goes down in the basement and he's looking for the king, and Reynolds tells him that he's currently busy with his studies. But Brimsley sees that the king is actually with a physician, and it's super weird because why would you hide that? When Brimsley sees this, he asks Reynolds why is he being examined, but Reynolds just tells him, you didn't see that. Coronation Day is nothing more than a big ruse. For the public, it looks like the king and the queen are in love, they're united, when in reality, as soon as they get behind closed doors, they go their separate ways. The queen has really taken to Lady Danbury. She confides in her quite a bit. And Lady Danbury tells Charlotte, as soon as you're with child, you're good. But that's easier said than done, because Charlotte explains to Lady Danbury that is all we do. Trust me, we are getting it on quite a bit. They even schedule this. Every other day, the two hook up. And while they don't like each other, these two hate fuck the shit out of each other. I mean, it's hot, it's passionate, it's steamy. Their arguments turn into sex. And they don't even care who's watching. At one point, they start doing it on the dining room table with an entire staff around. When she does get a moment to herself, she asks Brimsley about the upcoming season and how often she's expected to host balls and palace events, and she's surprised at his answer. Turns out the king doesn't really do that type of thing. She starts wondering aloud why exactly would a guy that seems like he's got it all together not want to host events. And Brimsley talks out of turn and says maybe it has to do with the doctor. But as soon as he says it, he realizes he shouldn't have said it. He tips Charlotte off to the fact that her husband was seeing another physician that isn't the palace physician. And now her head's kind of racing as to why that was. Later that day, after one of their bang sessions, she asks him, are you not well? I mean, I heard you saw a doctor in the cellar. And he plays it off like, well, yeah, it was Coronation Day. I had to be inspected. But she wisely points out, I'm the queen, and I wasn't inspected. You think there would be doctors over me than you because all anyone cares about is whether I'm a child or not. But George doesn't actually tell her any information, and it pisses her off. But the question of whether or not Charlotte is with a child is all anyone can think about, especially the princess. She meets with Agatha Danbury, and Danbury tells her that the wedding night was great, the two get along. She basically lies to the princess. She doesn't reveal anything that Charlotte actually tells her. She basically just tells Agatha what she would want to hear. The princess says, okay, well, keep your attention on it because there's pressure. And the pressure is coming from a guy named Lord Bute. But the pressure goes away if Charlotte is with child because it seals the great experiment. As the princess is talking about this, it gives Lady Danbury an opening to suggest throwing a ball. Lord Danbury really wanted to host the first ball of the season. So Agatha throws it to the princess. Hey, how about us? It would make sense. I'm one of the queen's ladies, and also the obvious. It would show a sign of unity. And initially, the princess says, no, that's not going to happen. But Lady Danbury wields her power by saying, well, if you want these teas to continue, then you should probably look into it. And the princess says, I will address it with Lord Bute. But in order to guarantee that she hosts the first ball of the season, Lady Danbury goes home. She tells Coral, send out invitations. If there's invites, then it doesn't give Lord Bute or the princess an opportunity to say no. She sends the invitations out, but when she gets to the palace the next day, a lot of the people are RSVPing no. Most of them are a part of the court, which hurts Agatha quite a bit. They're not really giving an explanation, but we all know the explanation. And this invitation gate is a huge deal. Parliament is actually in an uproar. People are refusing to go, and the charge is being led by Lord Ledger's wife. If you're wondering who Lord Ledger is, he's Violet Bridgerton's father. His wife is racist. He and his daughter, though, feel the exact opposite. They like the great experiment. They're cool with it. They don't look down on anybody. But his wife, she's a real see you next Tuesday. And she doesn't want anyone going to the first ball of the season if it's being held at the Danburys. So when Agatha goes to the palace the next day, she asks Charlotte for help, saying, could you encourage the other ladies in waiting to attend? Charlotte can't quite figure out what the issue is, but she's also distracted. That's because she's looking outside and she sees George in the garden. And he says that he's a farmer, but she just finds it really hard to believe that the King of England would actually be a farmer. But it appears that that might actually be the case. The Queen, though, gets distracted because she sees her husband out in the garden, shirtless, looking like a real snack. Lady Danbury gets the conversation back to her topic and explains how important it is that the Queen get people to attend. She gets her to understand what an impact it is for their kind of people. She doesn't come right out and say, this ball is important and everything you do is important for black people, but she's saying it without saying it. And Charlotte does get the message. That night, after one of their hookup sessions, they have a conversation about how gardening helps George feel like a normal person. Charlotte's feeling all lovey-dovey, and she asks him for help, telling him, I know you don't like social gatherings, but can you please go to this one? Because Charlotte is well aware that if she goes, everybody's going. And to his credit, the king says yes. So when Lord and Lady Danbury host the first ball of the season, everybody shows up because they don't want to not be in attendance when the king and the queen of England arrive. Overall, it's a rousing success for the great experiment. Unfortunately, Lord Danbury wants to celebrate like he always does. And that's just bad news for Lady Danbury. However, this night is different because the thrusting stops. And it's not because Lord Danbury finished, it's because he died. Lady Danbury goes to check on him and she sees, he's gone. She goes out, she gets Coral, and she excitedly tells her the news. Agatha Danbury had been waiting for this day since she married this guy. But she also has to put on a strong face and act like she's upset. Only Lady Danbury and Coral know the truth, that this is a good thing for them. As for Charlotte and George, they discuss the fact that they really made an impact that night. With one party, they made more change than Britain had made in the last century. They then head to bed, but Charlotte's awoken in the middle of the night by scratching. She goes to see what it is, thinking that it might be George, and it absolutely is George, but it's not at the same time. George isn't his normal self. He's drawing on the walls and talking to himself about Venus. He then flees when Charlotte tries to talk to him, and he rushes out into the garden, stripping down and yelling at the planet for Venus to come down. It takes Charlotte actually telling him, I'm Venus. I'm here, and I'm going inside, so you should too. But it's at this moment that Charlotte realizes the magnitude of George's disability. One that she didn't even know was present. Even with the disability, though, the two had a whole lot of kids, and modern-day Charlotte is puzzled. Puzzled as to why it is that her daughter's never married. She asks Brimsley for his best guess, and he's hesitant to tell her, but eventually he says, your daughters didn't want to marry because you're stuck here in this state. Your husband is still alive, and maybe if he had died earlier, it would be one thing. They could have moved on, but they don't want to leave you like this. And that's just a tough reality for the queen to stomach. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.